Hi guys, it's Rob from Royal Balls. I'm going to have a bit of a rant today. Inevitably, when you have a YouTube channel and you are very responsive to comments, people contact you for help and advice all the time, and I love to help. I'm not one of these guys that says if you need to ask that question you shouldn't be breeding. We all had to start somewhere, and I have no problem at all answering questions. This time of year I get a lot of questions on IDing of new hatchlings. I also get questions on breeding, incubation, cutting eggs, just about everything you could imagine. People will contact me and ask questions, and I try to answer everybody. Let's deal with identification of hatchlings first. I pass photos backwards and forwards with all my friends almost all the time, and we discuss the intricacies of identification of certain genes. If you're one of those people that's in regular contact with me, that's fine. Now, I'm going to speak on my own behalf here. Other people may have different views. Other people may not mind so much some of the things that bug me. But if you've never contacted me before and I don't know who you are, when you contact me, introduce yourself. Don't just send a bunch of photos and say ID please. That's rude. If I don't know you, tell me a little bit about yourself. I'm John Doe. This is my first year of breeding. I've got my first set of hatchlings and I'm unsure about how to identify them. I'm a big fan of your YouTube channel and I've learnt an awful lot, and I wonder if you would mind helping me ID my snakes. That's a great introduction. Sending a bunch of photos with ID please is not. I don't respond very well to that kind of request for help. So one of the first things that I need to know when requesting help with IDs is what was the pairing, what was the father, what was the mother, and what were the genes involved. This helps me to work out a theoretical ID and helps me to narrow down what I might be looking at. So please provide that information when you request help. If you suspect that something has crept into the clutch that you didn't anticipate, or that there is a different gene, I may actually request photographs of the parents as well. But usually photographs of the offspring are all that we need. Now do bear in mind, you've watched my ID videos and you've seen that I like to let my eyes do the work, and there is nothing that can beat handling the snakes, being able to turn them into different orientations, looking at them from different angles, seeing all the little subtleties of colour and pattern variation. And you simply cannot do that in a photograph. Good quality photographs with good lighting are essential to help with ID of the snakes. Let me give you some examples. Alright guys, when you're taking photographs of snakes with your hand phone, can you see how the hand phone is casting shadows everywhere because the lighting is from one side? Any objects on the table are also casting shadows on the table. So if we try and take a picture of a snake under these circumstances, here I am using my hand phone and there are shadows falling over the snake. There's an object on the table here and the lighting is actually not very good. So do spend some time trying to avoid getting shadows over your snake when you take pictures of them with a hand phone, because it makes it very, very difficult to get an ID, particularly when the lighting is bad. The shadows usually cover up detail that is essential. Try to get light from multiple sources and try to get a shot using your hand phone at an angle so that you're not casting a shadow over the snake when you take a picture. If I move up here, you can see the shadow. If I move down here, the shadow is not on the snake. So do be aware of that. Try and get decent lighting. Outdoor natural lighting is good, but if your room has overhead lights, you can use that. Just be careful of the shadows. Try also to get the full length of the snake in, showing the transition of the pattern to the belly. Show the belly pattern, show the head stamp. Try to get the full length of the snake in so that we can see the full pattern of the snake with it stretched out. Taking a photo of a snake like this, all curled up in a ball, is not the best. We need to see the full body pattern of the snake stretched out, particularly towards the rear of the snake where the pattern does tend to be modified. So do spend some time getting the best pose from your snake to allow a decent identification. So here are some examples of photos that I have taken myself. The lighting is not brilliant and there's tons of shadows, but by lifting the snake up towards the light I can get a much better angle. Also, asking somebody else to take the photo for you is often quite helpful. I've made sure that I've got the right angles, and in this particular case you can see the head stamp and the eye stripes. Don't forget to include a belly shot, and don't forget to include the head stamp. Now, you would not believe the number of photographs that I receive that obviously the person concerned has spent no time whatsoever taking photographs and getting the best orientations and the best light. I will try to respond, I will try to answer, but more often than not I'll ask you to get better photographs. So let's get that out of the way right up front. The amount of time you spend on your photographs is directly proportional to the amount of time that I will spend looking at them. Do not just send a bunch of photographs. You would not believe the number of times that I get 10 photographs and there are 6 snakes, and I have to sort out which are which. Number the photographs with the number of the snake. That keeps us all on the same page. That helps me to talk about a specific snake in any of the given photographs, and we both understand which snake I'm talking about. Number your photographs. Put the number on the photograph, because depending upon what social media, email, WhatsApp, whatever you're using, sometimes when you send a bunch of photos they all get jumbled up and they come out at my end in no particular order. So it's important to put the number on the photograph so they don't get mixed up. Okay, breeder advice. Usually new breeders are pretty much doing it right. They just need a little bit of reassurance that everything is okay. I often get asked, is this an ovulation? And I'm more than likely to ask you some questions in response to that. How long have you been pairing? When was the female going through her ravenous eating phase? When did she stop eating? These are questions that you'd be surprised how many people cannot answer. Now, I do not know your individual snake, and I have not followed through its breeding cycle or its hormonal cycle. My snakes, I know roughly where they are in their breeding cycle because I'm breeding them and I watch them every day. When you ask questions about your collection, remember I have not followed your individual snake. So there are certain milestones that we look for in the breeding process that tell us whereabouts in the cycle your female is. The milestones that are of interest would be when you first started pairing, how often you pair, how long do you leave the male with the female, what are your cues for removing the male from the female after a pairing, when did she start to build, when did you notice she started to gain weight, has she gone through that ravenous eating phase, has she stopped eating, when did she last eat, has she ovulated, have we had a pre-lay shed yet? These are all very visible cues that anybody should be able to observe that tell us whereabouts in the cycle your snake is, and that will help me to give you the best answer and the best advice for your particular circumstance. Cutting eggs. It's very common for people to ask me when they should cut their eggs. Let me give you an example. It's day 54, my eggs are dimpled, should I cut? Usually these are inexperienced breeders and they're a little bit impatient, and my advice is always the same: wait for the first pipper. Once you have a number of clutches under your belt in the same incubator, you will know roughly what day your eggs are going to pip, and therefore you will know what day it's safe to cut. Without that information, it's almost impossible to say. So wait for the first pipper, or wait until you have 2 or 3 clutches under your belt from that same incubator, and then you will know. Is cutting necessary? In almost all cases, I would say not. Most of my snakes hatch all by themselves. I'm just as impatient as anybody else, and sometimes I will cut eggs just to see what I've got after the first couple of pippers, but I'm not going to use the excuse that snakes can't get out of the egg by themselves. In almost all cases they can, and if you leave them alone, they will hatch perfectly okay on their own. You will not do any harm by leaving them alone. You're more likely to do harm by cutting them too early. So we try to avoid that by waiting for the first pippers. That's always going to be my advice. I do not know what setup you have, what temperatures you're running, what humidity is like, what your egg box setup is like, or any of the other variables that are going to affect when your eggs pip. So yes, I can advise. If somebody contacts me and says it's day 62 and all my eggs normally pip on day 56, should I cut? I'll usually ask for a photograph of the eggs so that I can see how dimpled they are. Again, my advice would usually be to wait for the first pipper, but in this particular case it's gone quite long and you probably might want to cut at least one of the eggs to see what's going on. Now contrast that with somebody that says it's day 56, should I cut? No. Wait until the first pipper. I do not know when your eggs are going to pip in your incubator. So asking when to cut is like asking how long is a piece of string. It's going to vary from person to person. Another thing that I find intensely irritating is when somebody asks for help. They're presumably asking for help because they've selected somebody that has experience that they trust the judgment of. So why then, after asking the question, do people suddenly the very next day post exactly the same question on all the Facebook groups that they are currently members of? That is disrespectful. Most of the advice that you're given involves observing your own snakes and making a judgment call. If you want to get a second opinion, I'm good with that. But the very next day, going on a Facebook group which is going to give you a heap of highly variable advice, some of it good and some of it bad, is not going to impress me. Next time you ask for help, I'll be a bit more reluctant to give it, knowing that you're going to go straight on Facebook and ask the same question to everybody on Facebook. Alright guys, that's my rant over with. I've tried to keep it upbeat and show you what I need if you want IDs of snakes. If you send good photos that are labelled properly, I will try to help. And I also like people to have a go themselves. There is nothing wrong with you saying, I think this snake is the following, what do you think? It's always good to have a go yourself. It's lazy just to expect somebody right off the bat to ID your snakes on your behalf. Have a go yourself. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to share, like and subscribe. And we'll see you for the next one. Hopefully it won't be a rant.